The air shimmered with heat as Nora Mills stood at her husband's grave, the bitter whispers of Copper Creek's residents echoing in her ears. Poor widow Mills, damaged goods now. No man will ever love her again. Her once vibrant auburn hair hung limp around her hollow cheeks, her 24 years feeling like a lifetime of sorrow already. Copper Creek, Colorado, 1875. A town built on silver dreams and broken promises. Nora had come here as a bride 3 years prior, full of hope, and married to a man 20 years her senior. Richard Mills had been kind enough, if not particularly loving, until consumption took him just as winter broke. Now she stood alone, the small plot of land they'd purchased together hanging by a thread. The bank was circling like vultures, waiting for her to fail. Mrs. Mills, Mr. Hargrove from the bank approached as the last mourners departed. I wanted to express my condolences and remind you that your husband's loan payment is due at the end of the month. Nora clutched her black shawl tighter around her shoulders. I'm aware, Mr. Hargrove. The cattle sale should cover it. Of course, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Though without a man to run things, perhaps you'd consider our offer to buy the property now. Save yourself the trouble. Nora's spine stiffened. I can manage just fine. No woman can run a cattle ranch alone, he said, shaking his head. Everyone knows that. It's only a matter of time before you fail. As Hargrove walked away, Nora fought back tears. Richard had left her with a half-built dream and a mountain of debt. The whispers around town had started the day after the funeral that she was cursed, that no decent man would touch a widow whose husband died in debt, that she'd never know love again. The next morning dawned bright and cruel. Nora saddled her mare and rode the perimeter of her small ranch. The 20 head of cattle Richard had purchased represented her last hope. If she could fatten them and sell them at market price, she might keep the bank at bay for a few more months. As she crested the hill overlooking the northern pasture, her heart sank. The fence was broken, and there was no sign of the cattle. Panic rose in her throat as she spurred her horse forward, following the obvious trail of the missing herd. 2 hours later, exhausted and sweating, she found them. They had wandered into a box canyon, but someone had erected a makeshift fence to keep them from straying further. A tall figure moved among them, examining each animal carefully. "Those are my cattle," Nora called out, her hand moving to the small revolver tucked in her saddlebag. The man turned, and Nora was struck by eyes as blue as a summer sky. Tall and lean, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that curled beneath his hat, he didn't look like any cattle rustler she'd encountered. "Found them wandering near the creek," he said, voice deep and steady. "Figured they belonged to someone nearby." "They're mine," Nora repeated, dismounting. "The fence must have broken in the night." "You're running cattle alone?" His brow furrowed, taking in her widow's black dress. "I don't see how that's your concern, mister." "Hayes, Hunter Hayes," he said, removing his hat briefly. "Just passing through. I was planning to bring them back to wherever they'd escaped from." Nora studied him, uncertain whether to trust his explanation. "Nora Mills. I own the Diamond M Ranch over that ridge." "You're Richard Mills's widow." Recognition dawned in his eyes. "I heard about his passing in town yesterday." "News travels fast," Nora said bitterly. "Were you acquainted with my husband?" "No, madam. Just overheard talk at the saloon." He hesitated. "They also said you'd be losing the ranch soon." Nora's cheeks burned. "People in this town have nothing better to do than gossip. I intend to keep what's mine." Hunter nodded, a hint of respect crossing his features. "These are good cattle. Herefords?" "Yes, Richard brought them from Kansas last spring." Hunter approached her, leading his own horse. "Your fence won't hold them for long, not the way it's built." "And I suppose you know better?" Nora challenged. "Worked cattle from Texas to Montana," he said without boasting. "I know fencing." Nora bit her lip, torn between pride and practicality. She needed those cattle contained if she had any hope of making the bank payment. "I have money," she said finally. "I could pay you to repair the fence." Hunter studied her for a long moment. "Let's get these cattle back first, then we can discuss payment." Together they herded the cattle back toward the Diamond M. Nora was surprised at how effortlessly Hunter worked with the animals, guiding them with quiet confidence. By midday, they had returned to the broken section of fence. "This won't hold," Hunter said, examining the posts. "The ground's too soft here. You need to move the line back about 20 yards to where the soil's more stable." "That would take days," Nora protested, "not with 2 people working." The offer hung in the air between them. Nora weighed her options. She needed help, but she'd learned to be wary of men offering assistance to a widow. $3 a day, she said firmly, and meals for 1 week's work. Hunter nodded. "That's fair. I'll start this afternoon." Over the next few days, Hunter proved himself to be a hard worker and a man of few words. He rose before dawn and worked until dusk, moving fence posts, digging new holes, and stringing barbed wire. Nora worked alongside him when she could, between tending to her small vegetable garden and preparing meals. On the 3rd evening, as they sat on the porch after supper, Hunter finally asked the question she'd been dreading. "Why are you doing this alone? Don't you have family who could help?" Nora stared out at the darkening landscape. "My parents died when I was 16. I worked as a seamstress in Denver until I met Richard. He was passing through on business, said he needed a wife to help establish his ranch." She smiled faintly. "I thought it was romantic at the time." "Was it?" Hunter's voice was soft. "It was a partnership. He was kind enough, but there wasn't much warmth." She looked down at her hands. "I'd hoped for children, but it never happened. I'm sorry." "What about you?" Nora asked, eager to shift the conversation. "What brings you through Copper Creek?" Hunter was silent for so long that Nora thought he might not answer. "Running, I suppose." "From the law," he laughed, a surprisingly warm sound. "No. From memories, maybe. I fought in the war, then drifted. Worked ranches across 5 territories. Never stayed anywhere long. And now? Now I'm fixing your fence," he said simply. The week passed quickly, with the fence taking shape under Hunter's skilled hands. Nora found herself looking forward to their evening conversations on the porch, where Hunter would sometimes share stories of his travels or listen attentively as she talked about her hopes for the ranch. On the 7th day, as Hunter was preparing to leave, a rider approached. It was Hargrove from the bank, his expression souring as he spotted Hunter. "Mrs. Mills," Hargrove called, dismounting. "I see you've hired help." "Mr. Hayes has been repairing my fencing," Nora replied coolly. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. "I've come about the payment. It's due in 3 days." "I'm aware of the date, Mr. Hargrove. The payment will be made on time." Hargrove looked skeptical. "The cattle aren't ready for market yet. How do you intend to meet your obligation?" Before Nora could respond, Hunter stepped forward. "Mrs. Mills has matters well in hand. Is there anything else you needed?" Hargrove bristled at the interruption. "This is bank business." Then deliver your message and be on your way, Hunter said, his tone polite but firm. After Hargrove departed, Nora turned to Hunter. You didn't have to do that. Men like him prey on people they think are vulnerable. Hunter's jaw tightened. How much do you owe? Nora hesitated, then told him the amount. Hunter whistled low. That's steep for this property. Richard borrowed against expected profits from the cattle. Nora sighed. I've been saving every penny, but I'm still short. Hunter was quiet for a moment. I could stay on, help you get those cattle ready for market. Nora studied his face, searching for ulterior motives. Why would you do that? Maybe I'm tired of drifting, he said simply. Or maybe I just don't like seeing someone fight alone when they don't have to. Nora agreed to his offer, though she insisted on drawing up a proper contract, promising him a small percentage of the cattle sale. Hunter moved his few possessions into the small bunkhouse that had been built for future ranch hands. Word spread quickly through Copper Creek that Widow Mills had hired the mysterious stranger. The gossip took on a new dimension: speculation about her morals, predictions that she was being swindled, bets on how quickly she would fail. They're saying I've hired you for more than ranch work, Nora told Hunter one evening, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Hunter's expression darkened. People will talk. Doesn't make it true. It doesn't bother you? I've been called worse than a widow's companion, he said with a wry smile. The days stretched into weeks as they worked side by side. Hunter taught Nora about cattle management, which animals to cull, how to treat minor ailments, when to move them to fresh pasture. Under his guidance, the herd flourished, and they managed to make the minimum payment to the bank, buying Nora more time. As spring gave way to summer, Nora found herself watching Hunter when he wasn't looking, the way his hands moved confidently over a task, the rare smile that transformed his serious face, the quiet consideration he showed her. She told herself it was merely appreciation for his help, but the flutter in her chest when their hands accidentally touched suggested otherwise. One hot afternoon, as they worked to clear a fallen tree from the creek that watered the cattle, Hunter lost his footing on the slippery bank and tumbled into the water. Nora couldn't help laughing at the sight of the usually composed cowboy sitting drenched in the shallow water. Hunter looked up at her, surprised. Then a slow smile spread across his face. In one swift motion, he reached out and pulled her into the creek with him. Nora shrieked as the cold water soaked her dress, but her indignation quickly dissolved into laughter. For a moment, they sat there in the stream, laughing like children. Then Hunter's eyes met hers, and something shifted between them. His gaze dropped to her lips, and Nora felt her breath catch. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Hunter leaned forward. His lips were gentle against hers, the kiss tentative and questioning. Nora answered by sliding her hand to the back of his neck, drawing him closer. The kiss deepened, sending warmth spreading through her despite the cold water. When they finally broke apart, Hunter rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that for weeks, he admitted. Nora smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. What took you so long, Cowboy? That evening, sitting on the porch as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, Hunter told her more of his past. How he'd left home at 16 to fight in the war, how he'd drifted afterward, unable to settle, how he'd come to Copper Creek by chance, following rumors of ranch work. I never planned to stay, he confessed. Then I found your cattle. And now? Nora asked, her heart beating faster. Hunter took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Now I'm finding reasons to put down roots." Their courtship progressed through the summer, as private as they could keep it in a town like Copper Creek. Hunter was respectful, always returning to the bunkhouse at night, though the longing looks they exchanged made Nora wish for less propriety. The gossip in town shifted again. Some still predicted disaster, claiming Hunter would steal her cattle and disappear. Others suggested more scandalous arrangements between them. A few kinder souls simply wished the young widow some happiness after her loss. "Let them talk," Hunter said when Nora mentioned the gossip. "They've already decided you can't succeed. Proving them wrong will be satisfaction enough." As the cattle grew fat on summer grass, they began preparations for the drive to market in Denver. The journey would take nearly 2 weeks, and Nora insisted on accompanying Hunter. "A woman on a cattle drive?" Hunter raised his eyebrows. "That'll give them something new to gossip about." "It's my herd," Nora said firmly. "Besides, I refuse to sit here wondering if you'll come back." Hunter's expression softened. "I'd come back to you, Nora, but I understand why you need to go." They hired 2 local boys to help with the drive, paying them with promises of a bonus if the cattle fetched good prices. The night before their departure, Nora couldn't sleep, her mind racing with both excitement and anxiety. A soft knock at her door startled her. Hunter stood outside, his expression serious. "I needed to talk to you before tomorrow," he said, remaining on the porch, "in case things don't go as planned." "What is it?" Nora asked, wrapping her shawl tighter around her nightgown. Hunter took a deep breath. "I love you, Nora. I think I have since I saw you standing up to me over those stray cattle, so fierce and determined." He reached for her hand. "I know it hasn't been long, and I know what people say about widows remarrying. But when we return from Denver, if you'd consider it, I'd like to ask you properly to be my wife." Tears welled in Nora's eyes. After Richard's practical partnership, Hunter's declaration felt like a revelation. "I love you too," she whispered, "and yes, I'd consider it, more than consider it." Hunter's smile was brilliant in the moonlight as he pulled her into a kiss that promised more than words could say. The cattle drive began at dawn, pushing the 20 head of Herefords toward Denver. The journey was grueling, with long days in the saddle and short nights spent camping under the stars. Nora proved her mettle, working alongside the men, never complaining despite the blisters on her hands and the ache in her muscles. On the 4th night, as they camped near a small stream, one of the young hands, Tommy, approached Nora hesitantly. "Mrs. Mills," he began, twisting his hat in his hands, "I just wanted to say, my ma always said you were foolish to try running that ranch alone, but seeing you out here," he gestured to the cattle, "well, I reckon she was wrong." Nora smiled, touched by the simple acknowledgement. "Thank you, Tommy. That means a great deal to me." Later, as she and Hunter sat by the fire after the boys had gone to sleep, she recounted the conversation. "The first person in Copper Creek to admit I might succeed," she mused. Hunter squeezed her hand. "Won't be the last." The journey continued without major incident until they were just 2 days from Denver. As they made camp for the night, Hunter noticed riders approaching from the east, 3 men, moving with purpose. "Get to the wagon," he told Nora quietly, his hand moving to the revolver at his hip. Nora did as he asked, retrieving her own small pistol from her saddlebag. She watched as Hunter positioned himself between the approaching riders and their camp. "Evening," Hunter called as the men drew near. "Something we can help you with?" The lead rider, a weathered man with a scar across his cheek, reined in his horse. "Heard you were moving cattle to Denver." "Word travels fast," Hunter replied, his stance casual but alert. "These roads can be dangerous," the man continued. "Lots of desperate folk about." "We're managing fine," Hunter said coldly. The man smiled, revealing a gold tooth. "We could offer protection for a fee." "We don't need protection," Hunter said. "Move along." The three men exchanged glances. "Don't be hasty," the leader said. "We're talking about 3, maybe 4 head. Small price for safe passage." Nora stepped forward, her pistol visible in her hand. "Those cattle represent months of work. We're not giving up a single one." The men seemed surprised by her appearance and determination. The leader assessed the situation, Hunter's steady hand on his revolver, Nora's unwavering aim, and the 2 young hands who had emerged from their bedrolls, rifles in hand. "The widow's got spirit," the scarred man said with a laugh. "Fine. Keep your cattle." His expression hardened. "But the roads to Denver have many dangers. Best keep your eyes open." After they departed, Hunter insisted on setting watches through the night. He took the first shift, with Nora joining him despite his protests that she should rest. "Do you think they'll be back?" she asked, scanning the darkness beyond their campfire. "Possibly," Hunter admitted. "Men like that prey on travelers they think are vulnerable." Nora's jaw set with determination. "Then they've misjudged us just like everyone else." They doubled their vigilance over the next 2 days, but the threatened attack never came. When the Denver stockyards came into view, Nora felt a surge of triumph. They had made it. The cattle sold for better than expected prices, the healthy animals fetching premium rates from buyers eager for quality stock. As Nora counted out the money enough to pay off a substantial portion of her debt and still have capital for improvements, she could hardly believe their success. "We did it," she whispered to Hunter as they left the bank, the remainder of their funds secure in a money belt beneath her dress. Hunter's eyes shone with pride. "You did it, Nora. These were your cattle, your risk." "Our success," she insisted, squeezing his hand. They spent 2 days in Denver, purchasing supplies and equipment for the ranch. Nora found herself lingering outside a dress shop, admiring a green silk gown far more fashionable than anything she'd worn since her mourning began. "You should have it," Hunter said, catching her gaze. "It's frivolous," she protested. "The money should go back into the ranch." "Consider it an investment in the future," Hunter suggested with a smile. "Every successful rancher needs to look the part sometimes." The journey back to Copper Creek was lighter, their wagon laden with supplies, but their hearts unburdened by the anxiety of the outward trip. They paid the boys their promised bonus, earning their loyalty for future drives. As they approached the Diamond M, Nora felt a surge of emotion. The small ranch had been a burden when Hunter first arrived. Now it felt like the foundation of a future. Word of their successful sale spread quickly through Copper Creek. Hargrove from the bank could barely conceal his surprise when Nora presented him with payment well above the minimum required. "This is unexpected," he admitted, counting the money a second time. "Perhaps we misjudged your capabilities, Mrs. Mills." "Perhaps you did," Nora agreed coolly. "I'll expect more favorable terms when we discuss the remaining balance." As summer turned to fall, the Diamond M began to transform. With the profits from the cattle sale, they hired workers to expand the barn, purchased additional stock, and planted winter feed crops. Hunter proved to be as skilled at planning as he was at working. his years of drifting having taught him valuable lessons about ranching in different territories. True to his word, once they returned from Denver, Hunter formally asked for Nora's hand. They were married on a crisp October afternoon. With only a few guests in attendance, the young hands who had helped with the cattle drive, the kindly reverend, and even a few townspeople who had come to respect Nora's determination. The wedding night was everything Nora had secretly dreamed of during the months of their restrained courtship. Hunter's gentle hands and passionate kisses awakened feelings she had never experienced in her practical first marriage. As they lay tangled in sheets afterward, Hunter traced the curve of her cheek with a calloused finger. "Happy?" he asked. Nora smiled, pressing a kiss to his palm. "Happier than I ever imagined possible." When winter came, they faced it together, the cozy ranch house warmed by more than just the fire and the hearth. The cattle weathered the cold in the new barn, and by spring, the herd had increased with the birth of healthy calves. 1 year after Hunter had first found Nora's straying cattle, they stood together on the porch of the ranch house surveying their domain. The Diamond M had nearly doubled in size, with new pastures, more cattle, and even 2 hired hands who lived permanently in the expanded bunkhouse. "What are you thinking?" Hunter asked, noticing Nora's contemplative expression. She leaned against his solid presence, her hand unconsciously moving to her abdomen, where their first child had just begun to grow. She hadn't told him yet, wanting to be certain before sharing the joyous news. "I'm thinking about how everyone said I'd never succeed here," she replied, "that I'd never find happiness again after Richard died, that no man would want a widow with a failing ranch and mounting debts." Hunter pulled her closer. "They didn't know how strong you are." "They didn't know you would come along," Nora countered, "that you would see something in me worth believing in." "I saw a woman who refused to give up, even when everyone told her she should," Hunter said simply. "How could I not fall in love with that?" Nora turned in his arms to face him, her eyes shining. "I have something to tell you." As she shared her news, Hunter's expression transformed with wonder and joy. He lifted her gently, spinning her in a circle as laughter bubbled from both their throats. Later that week, they rode into town together for supplies. Nora noticed the changed glances from the townspeople, respect where there had once been pity, admiration where there had been doubt. As they passed the general store, Mrs. Peterson, the shopkeeper's wife who had once been among the most vocal about Nora's inevitable failure, hurried out to greet them. "Mrs. Hayes," she called using Nora's new name, "I was hoping to see you. We're forming a ladies' auxiliary to support the new schoolhouse. We'd be honored if you'd join us." Nora exchanged a glance with Hunter, whose eyes twinkled with amusement. "I'd be delighted," she replied graciously. As they continued down the street, Hunter chuckled. "Quite a change from poor Widow Mills, who'll never amount to anything." "Success has a way of changing people's minds," Nora observed. "Love has a way of changing everything," Hunter countered, taking her hand. By the following spring, the Diamond M had become one of the most prosperous ranches in the county. When their daughter, Elizabeth, was born with Hunter's blue eyes and Nora's determination, their happiness seemed complete. On Elizabeth's first birthday, as friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate, Nora found a moment alone with Hunter near the corral. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked, watching as one of the hands showed their daughter a gentle pony. "When you found my stray cattle that day?" Hunter shook his head, his arms secure around her waist. "I was just passing through, remember? looking for a few days' work before moving on. What made you stay? Hunter considered the question. At first it was the challenge. A woman fighting against all odds to keep what was hers. His voice softened. Then it was you, your courage, your heart. I realized I'd been searching for home my whole life without knowing what it looked like. And now? Hunter smiled, watching their daughter laugh as the pony nuzzled her small hand. Now I know exactly what it looks like. It looks like you. As twilight settled over the Diamond M, casting long shadows across the prosperous ranch, Nora reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a grieving widow, everyone had written off, to a successful rancher and beloved wife and mother, she had defied every prediction. "They said I'd never be loved again," she murmured against Hunter's chest as they swayed together on the porch, watching the stars emerge. Hunter tipped her face up to his kiss as tender as their first day in the creek. "They were wrong about everything else," he said. "Why should that have been any different?" In the years that followed, as the Diamond M flourished and their family grew, Nora and Hunter became fixtures in the community they had once stood apart from. The whispers that had once cut like knives had long since faded, replaced by stories of the widow who refused to fail, and the drifting cowboy who had helped her prove everyone wrong. But for Nora, the greatest victory wasn't in the prosperity of their ranch, or even in the respect they had earned. It was in the love she had found when she least expected it, a love born of respect and partnership, tempered by challenges and strengthened by shared dreams. Every night, as she fell asleep in Hunter's arms, she thanked whatever twist of fate had sent her cattle straying that spring morning, leading a blue-eyed cowboy to her door and changing the course of her life forever.